just want to apologize up front that we didn't have you sitting in leather back, wing back chairs in a smoky lounge type of a room, right? Every time I've heard her sing that, it's just kind of taking me back to a place like that. So we'll bring those in for the next service or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, hey, welcome to Compass Christian Church. Good morning. Our mission here is navigating people to God, and we are so incredibly glad that you're here. My name is Nathan Lewis. I get to serve here on staff at the Roanoke campus as the Next Steps pastor, and I also get to kick off our Christmas series this morning. Christmas is in full effect. Thanksgiving is done with. Fall had its day, literally one day, because Christmas takes over everything, right? It's not going to be very long. I firmly believe that at some point in the near future, Hobby Lobby is just going to keep all of the holiday decorations out all year round. And they're just gonna throw it out there and be like, hey, we've got an early bird Christmas sale going on. It starts on December 26th. And it takes over, right? So Christmas is ramping up even more than it already has been. And we start today our Home for Christmas series. And our hope at the end of this 4-week series is that we would all recapture the wonder of Christmas. That's actually what our Christmas Eve services are going to be based on and focus on, is the wonder of Christmas. And so we want to invite you to be a part of that. We want to invite your friends, your family. We want you to help us invite and bring people in so that we can help recapture the wonder of Christmas. But over the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at a couple of different things leading up to that. One of the things we'll look at is the truth of Christmas and the peace of Christmas. But today, we kick this whole thing off by looking at the traditions of Christmas. Because every single one of us in here, most of us, if not all of us, have at least one Christmas tradition that we observe every single Christmas season. Maybe for some of you in here, that means that you decorate the house for Christmas, and you decorate maybe on a certain day at a certain time, certain rooms in a certain order. Maybe some of you in here are movie people where you like to watch a new Christmas movie every year, whatever the new one is that's coming on, Disney Plus or Netflix or whatever the case may be, or Hallmark. You want to watch a new Christmas movie every year. But then there are those of you that want to watch the same Christmas movie every single year. 1,000 times a day. You got to quote the movie at every single family gathering type of a deal. And it's one of the 3 greatest Christmas movies, surely, right? Christmas Vacation, right? Yep. Elf and Die Hard. See, you're laughing at me, but Die Hard is a Christmas movie, okay? You cannot tell me that Home Alone is a Christmas movie, because what's Home Alone about? It takes place on Christmas Eve, and some guys are trying to break into this little kid's house, and he's protecting it, right? Guess what Die Hard's about? It happens on Christmas Eve at a corporate Christmas party, and it's about some terrorists trying to break into a safe. It's a Christmas movie. But traditions, right? Some of you in here, traditions, you may want to go and look at lights in a certain neighborhood. You may want to leave milk and cookies out for Santa. Maybe your deal is live nativities or opening one present on Christmas Eve. Or maybe your tradition is that little creepy, slightly satanic looking elf on the shelf, right? No matter where you find yourself in this whole Jesus Christianity thing, whether you believe in him or not, whether you're dipping your toe in the water, every single person in here has at least one Christmas tradition that we observe, right? And it's those Christmas traditions that make everything so special for us. I found a quote that I believe sums this whole thing up perfectly. It says, "It is often these small traditions that create happy and lasting memories, holding a special place in our life as we grow older." It's the happiest season of all. Because of these tiny moments, because of these traditions that we observe, it makes it feel like home. It makes things warm and cozy because of these special moments that we observe every single year. But if you're like me, at some point in time during the Christmas season, you begin to ask the question, what's the point, right? Because every single year, and I don't know if you're like me or not, but every single year it seems like Christmas just becomes more and more chaotic. You begin to hear about Black Friday sales going on in October. You begin to hear stories about these people that are getting arrested and getting in fights over stupid gifts like a $2 towel or something, right? And then like even beyond all of that, you end up having that conversation that you dread having every single year about whose house you're gonna do Christmas at and when, right? And that conversation usually goes a little bit like this, like, well, you had Christmas with them last year. Why don't you wanna come to our house for the holidays? Why don't you wanna be with us? Why do you like them so much better than us? Do you not love us? Why do you love them so much more? Why can't you come to our house for Christmas? Maybe because of the conversation that we're having right now. But then you finally figure it out, right? You finally figure out where you're gonna go. You've got your schedule set, your days situated, and you realize that you have to go to 5 different houses in one day. In one day. Your Christmas list has now gone from 3 kids to 57, 90% of which you don't remember their names. You couldn't pick them out of a lineup, right? And so then everything is fine, everything is great. You get there, oh man, it's present time. And then you've got the added stress ball of whether or not they're gonna actually like their gift. Like, are you gonna get that, oh, wow? Are you gonna get that reaction, or are you gonna get the, oh, wow. It's a singing fish. Awesome. Like, are you gonna get that reaction? And no matter what it is, like, there's just so much turmoil and chaos that surrounds the Christmas holiday that at some point in time, you begin to ask yourself, what is the point of this whole thing? But maybe it's bigger than that for some of you in here. Maybe Christmas completely and totally wrecks you because it's the first holiday that you're having to experience without a certain loved one. Or maybe for you, it just reminds you of all of the stuff that you don't have. And I'm not talking like the material stuff, but like the family, the husband, the wife, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the kids, the job. And so for you, Christmas is literally the furthest thing in the world from the happiest season of all. It's terrible. But see, here's the thing. My hope is that regardless of where you find yourself on the Christmas joy scale, that every single person in here, every single person watching online will leave today with a new perspective on Christmas. That over the next several weeks leading up to Christmas, that we could actually anticipate and look forward to the Christmas season because we actually understand what Christmas is really and truthfully all about. And to find that, to remember that, to figure that out, we have to go back to the very beginning. And I'm literally talking like the very beginning of everything, right? So if you have your Bibles or you have the YouVersion app, flip open to Genesis chapter 1. If you don't have either one of those, completely fine. We will have the biggest Bible in the room for you, okay? So Genesis chapter 1, it's the very beginning of the Bible. It's the very beginning of everything. In chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, or 1 and 2 say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. It's begun. The entire creation process begins here. And over the next couple of chapters, we begin to read how God creates light and sky and the sea. We begin to see how he molds and sculpts and shapes the landscape into mountains and valleys and canyons and plains. We see how he begins to paint the landscape with incredibly beautiful vegetation. We see how it is that he brings life to land and sea, filling it with all sorts of wild and magnificent creatures. And then we come to the grand masterpiece. Verses 26 and 27 say, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground.'" So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And so what we see is God creating incredible beauty from absolutely nothing. What we see is God putting chaos into order. The unfortunate thing is that it doesn't take long for human beings to screw it all up. Just a chapter later, we see Adam and Eve break the one and only rule that they had. You had one job. Don't eat the fruit. Can I touch it? Sure. Can I smell it? That's a little weird, but yeah, why not? Can I sit underneath the tree? Absolutely. It's great for shade. Can I toss it back and forth and play baseball with it? Sure. Can I take a bite of it? No. So they eat the only fruit that God tells them not to eat. And at that moment, their eyes were opened and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. Shame and guilt and brokenness enters into the world for the very first time. And so the chaos that God has just ordered falls back into chaos. And throughout the rest of history, that chaos begins to permeate and spread like a terrible virus throughout all of creation. The relationship between man and God, the created and the creator, is skewed, tainted, and broken. Because in verse 8, it continues on by saying, "When the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord God walking about in the garden. So they hid from the Lord God among the trees." See, what once was intimate is now distant. What once was connected has now been severed. But thankfully, that's not the end of the story. And it's at this point that the great rescue plan of God goes into effect. And for the rest of the Old Testament, we see God beginning to bring the chaos that we let loose. We see God beginning to bring the chaos back into order according to his great rescue plan. See, he had a plan. He has a plan. And some of you in here today need to hear that above all else. Because let's be real. Sometimes it doesn't really seem like he's got a plan because we can't really wrap our minds around what's going down. Sometimes it's so hard for us to see what's around the corner that we just kind of toss our hands up and are like, "Are you there? Do you have any idea what's going on? You clearly don't have a plan for this. So let me step in and give you mine." Because there's really no good reason, if you look at the world around us, there's no good reason why cancer should be running rampant across all of creation. There's no good reason why parents should have to bury their children. There's no good reason why parents should sell their kids for a bag of rice. There's no good reason why race relations should be as tense and as tenuous as they are. There's no good reason that your spouse left you and your kids. Except for the fact that chaos still exists and it's still being reordered. Too often, it may not seem like God has a plan, but he did and he does. And so as we continue to read throughout the Old Testament after Genesis, if we read closely, what we find is that throughout the hard and unreal and unimaginable circumstances that we find in the Old Testament, what we can actually see is that God is preparing his people to experience something that has not been experienced since Genesis, himself. And so as we open up the New Testament, we begin to find the culmination of this great rescue plan in an 8-pound, 6-ounce baby Jesus in golden fleece diapers, right? But look, all joking aside, this is a huge deal. This is massive Because we read in the New Testament book of John, in the first chapter, it says this: in the beginning, the Word, and the Word is Jesus. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. And the Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. Jesus has been around from the very beginning. He was with God at and through this whole creation process. As a matter of fact, John is telling us that Jesus was the hands-on contractor during the whole creation process. He's always been right there with God, which means that he was with God when God was walking through the garden in Genesis 3 looking for Adam and Eve. It means that he was there in the Old Testament through everything that we read. What John is telling us is that everything up to this point in human history is pointing to one person, and that's Jesus. And so he continues down, John continues down in verse 14. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. But I love the way that Eugene Peterson puts it in his Message translation. He says, the Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish. And he moved into the neighborhood. But really, if Jesus had always been there, if Jesus had been there throughout the whole creation process, if Jesus had been there in Genesis 3 and throughout the Old Testament, I would go so far as to say that he doesn't just move into the neighborhood, that he moves back into the neighborhood. See, Jesus came home for Christmas. Do not miss the importance of that point in that moment in history. There's a quote that I found by a commentator that I believe captures the weight of this moment perfectly. He says this: the Word becoming flesh is the decisive event in human history, indeed in the history of creation, because the incarnation, the Word putting on flesh, Jesus coming down, Jesus coming home and moving into the neighborhood, because the incarnation changes God's relationship to humanity and humanity's relationship to God. The incarnation means that human beings can see, hear, and know God in ways never before possible. Because Jesus moved back into the neighborhood, because he came home for Christmas, we now have the opportunity to know Creator God like no other human being on the earth outside of Adam and Eve. I love how Tim Keller puts it. He says, God didn't give us an argument, he gave us a human. Jesus came home for Christmas so that we could know God once more as God originally intended from the very beginning of time. This is such a huge and massive deal because Jesus coming home for Christmas literally changes everything. I told you before, like if you read closely within the New Testament, you'll begin to see glimpses of this Messiah figure, which is Jesus. You begin to see glimpses and snapshots and little photos of how this Messiah is gonna operate, what they're gonna be about, how they're gonna change everything, how it is that they're going to reorder the chaos. And the best picture that you can find of this is in a book titled Isaiah. And in Isaiah chapter 65, verses 17 through 25, he writes how everything is gonna change because of the birth of this Messiah, because of the birth of Jesus. He writes how that chaos, that turmoil is gonna be reordered. And so God is speaking Or according to John, Jesus, the Word, is saying this in Isaiah 65. Pay close attention now. I'm creating new heavens and a new earth. All the earlier troubles, chaos, and pain are things of the past to be forgotten. Look ahead with joy. Anticipate what I'm creating. I'll create Jerusalem as sheer joy, create my people as pure delight. I'll take joy in Jerusalem, take delight in my people. And check this out. No more sounds of weeping in the city. No more cries of anguish. No more babies dying in the cradle or old people who don't enjoy a full lifetime. 100 birthdays will be considered normal. Anything less will seem like a cheat. They'll build houses and move in. They'll plant fields and eat what they grow. No more building a house that some outsider takes over. No more planting fields that some enemy confiscates. For my people will be as long-lived as trees. My chosen ones will have satisfaction in their work. They won't work and have nothing come of it. They won't have children snatched out from under them. For they themselves are plantings blessed by God, with their children and grandchildren, likewise God blessed. Before they call out, I'll answer. Before they finish speaking, I'll have heard. And this is the mind-blowing part to me. Wolf and lamb will graze the same meadow. Lion and ox eat straw from the same trough, but snakes, they'll get a diet of dirt. Can I get an amen? Neither animal nor human will hurt or kill anywhere on my holy mountain. Guys, no more chaos. No more pain, no more suffering, no more heartache. People will no longer bury their children. People will no longer be taken advantage of and exploited. Hate and violence will be completely eradicated. Families will be made whole without any chance of ever being ripped apart again. Chaos will be brought back into order, all because Jesus, the Word, the Son of God, moved into the neighborhood as a baby boy. All because Jesus came home for Christmas. And so if you love Christmas with everything inside of you, you can live in hope. If you hate Christmas with everything inside of you, you can still live in hope. Even though chaos abounds around us, maybe even inside of us, we can all still live in hope. Because God has always had a plan to reorder the chaos in and through Jesus Christ. 33 years after he was made flesh, after he moved into the neighborhood and came home for Christmas, he was nailed to a cross for you and for me and for the world around us. And so because we can come to know God, we can come to know that his plan is in full effect, that chaos is being reordered. And so I have a question that I want to ask you today to end with, but before I ask you that question, I want to tell you a story. So this last week was Thanksgiving, obviously. My family and I flew to the border of Alabama and Georgia where my parents live, and the closest airport to them is the Atlanta airport, the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta airport. One of the busiest airports in the entire nation, sometimes even the world. Chaos, right? Flying in wasn't that bad. We flew back to Texas on Friday, Black Friday, and I've got two small boys. I've got a 4-year-old and I've got a 10-month-old. And so we're pushing the 10-month-old through the airport, trying to get through security with the stroller. My 4-year-old, if you've met him, he's probably running around out there right now, wild as a banshee type of a deal. But I don't know if he's like hungover from turkey or just whatever, but like he's just walking around like, and I'm trying to corral him and be like, you can't say that, get shot. Right? So like we're trying to go through security and everything and whatnot, trying trying to corral 2 kids, and it's chaos. We finally get through security, put all of our stuff back together, put our shoes back on, everything is situated, and we just get to take a breath and we go, oh man. And we stand in line at the elevator to go downstairs and hop on this train that they have to take you to your terminal. And we're literally standing in line. It's probably about 10 to 12 people deep, standing in line with a stroller. It's big and black. It's hard to miss it. When these guys just start coming up and like go straight to the front of the line. And so because I'm in Atlanta and nobody knows that I'm a pastor there, I say out loud, good thing there's not a line back here, fellas. And they give me that look or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah. So we wait and we go down and we get on the train and people are trying to push an elbow. Can you move? Can you make space? Like my 4-year-old's getting bumped into it. And finally, like I'm at the breaking point where I've had enough and I'm like, I'm just gonna start elbowing people in the throat. Like this is not okay, right? I'm gonna protect my family. And I literally have that thought as I'm going over this message in my head. Chaos was surrounding me. And I just wanted to contribute to the chaos. And so let me ask you this question that I'm asking myself as well. If God is in the process of reordering the chaos, which do you contribute to? Order or chaos? In a couple of weeks, some of you are gonna wake up and your head's gonna pop off the pillow and you're gonna go, oh no, I still got 3 gifts to get. And so you're gonna have to brave the chaos of those psychotic shoppers that are going out at 3 a.m. And if that's you, I'll pray for you. But in the midst of all of that, when you're standing in line, when it's taking forever, when things are not going your way and you get up to the cashier, are you going to mouth off to them? Are you gonna complain and bicker about everything that's going on? Or are you gonna usher in order? Look them in the face and say, thanks for doing what you do. When you show up to that house on Christmas Day to have the meal and to open presents, it's that one house that you try to get out of every single year because it's that in-law's house, it's that family member's house, that step-parent, whatever that person is, that brother, that sister, that you dread going to that house because every single time you are there is a moment where they will say a statement to you that just completely destroys your soul. And so when you show up to that house, the door opens and it's that person, the last person in the world that you want to see. And they greet you not with Merry Christmas, but with that statement. How are you going to react? Are you gonna come in guns blazing like John McClane in Nakatomi Plaza, taking out hostiles in Hans Gruber? Or do you hug them, give them an authentically warm embrace, you turn the other cheek, and you say, Merry Christmas, it's good to see you. And then a couple hours later, you sit down at the table, not at the opposite end, but right next to him, so that the lion and the ox will eat from the same trough. Order or chaos? What do you usher in? See, Jesus came home for Christmas, and in doing so, he turned the world right side up. He is beginning to order the chaos. And the crazy thing is that he wants you and he wants me to be a part of that. And so this holiday season, as we dive into Christmas, what will you contribute to? The order or the chaos? Will you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for your story. We thank you so much that the story didn't end with Adam and Eve screwing up. We're so thankful that it didn't end during the time of Noah or Moses or any other human being that completely wrecks your world. Thank you so much for sending Jesus back home to reorder the chaos. And God, thank you so much for reordering the chaos in our lives. Thanks for reordering the chaos in my life, to be really honest with you. And God, we ask for your wisdom, your patience, your grace, your mercy, your love, so that we can contribute to the order and not the chaos in this crazy holiday season that really and truthfully is all about your rescue plan. Thank you so much for Jesus. And it's in his name.